The stars stretched endlessly before the Eos, a sleek exploration vessel that represented humanity's boldest step into the unknown. Its crew of 12 was handpicked for their skills, courage, and ability to adapt to whatever mystery space might throw at them. But even the most experienced among them felt uneasy as they approached the source of the signal, a faint, broken transmission that had been bouncing through the void for decades. Captain Elira Voss stood on the bridge, her sharp green eyes scanning the swirling chaos outside. The ship's sensors showed nothing but static and distortion. "This doesn't make sense," muttered Lieutenant Arlen Cade, the ship's navigator, his fingers flying over the console. "These gravitational anomalies are off the charts. It's like the laws of physics themselves don't apply here." Elira didn't respond immediately. She trusted her instincts, and right now, they were screaming at her to turn back. But she also knew this could be the discovery of a lifetime, the kind of breakthrough that would cement humanity's place among the stars. Central Command had warned her not to go further, citing risks too great to justify curiosity. Yet, deep down, she couldn't ignore the pull of the unknown. "Keep us steady, Arlen," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "We're not leaving until we know what's out there." As the Eos pushed deeper into the anomaly, strange things began happening. Lights flickered across the ship, and instruments gave erratic readings. One moment, the temperature dropped so low frost formed on the walls. The next, it spiked, making sweat bead on everyone's foreheads. Even the artificial gravity seemed unstable, causing objects to float briefly before crashing back down. In the science bay, Dr. Rin Calder hunched over her workstation, analyzing fragments of the distress signal. Her dark hair was tied back tightly, though strands kept escaping as she worked feverishly. "It's not random noise," she announced suddenly, spinning around to face the others. "There's a pattern here, bursts repeating every 37 seconds. Someone, or something, is trying to communicate." Her words sent a ripple of tension through the room. Communication implied intelligence, but who or what could survive in such a hostile environment? And why would anyone send a message from a place like this? Before anyone could answer, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared, and red warning lights bathed the corridors. "What's going on?" Elira demanded, gripping the edge of a console to steady herself. "It's the engines," shouted Engineer Kai Solis, rushing onto the bridge. His usually cheerful face was pale with worry. "Something's pulling us off course. I can't compensate." On the main screen, a massive shadow loomed ahead, a planet cloaked in perpetual storms. Jagged lightning illuminated its surface, revealing towering structures that looked almost organic, twisting and writhing under the dim glow of a dying sun. Despite its alien beauty, there was something deeply unsettling about the sight, as if the planet itself were alive and watching them. "We need to land," Elira decided after a long pause. "If that signal is coming from there, we owe it to ourselves and to humanity to find out why." The crew exchanged nervous glances. They all knew the dangers of setting foot on an uncharted world, especially one so clearly inhospitable. But none of them argued. This was their mission, their purpose. Whatever secrets lay hidden beneath those stormy skies, they were determined to uncover them, even if it meant risking everything. As the Eos descended toward the planet's surface, the air grew heavier with anticipation. No one spoke, each lost in their own thoughts. Somewhere below, answers waited, but so did questions no one was prepared to ask. The Eos touched down on the planet's surface with a shuddering thud, its landing struts sinking slightly into the soft, ash-like ground. Outside, the world was a vision of desolation. Towering spires of black stone jutted out of the landscape like jagged teeth, their surfaces pulsating faintly as though alive. The air shimmered with heat and toxic fumes, forcing the crew to don protective suits before stepping outside. Even through the thick visors, the oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on them. Captain Elira Voss led the first team cautiously toward the nearest structure. Each step kicked up clouds of gray dust that hung in the air longer than they should have, defying gravity. "Stay sharp," she said over the comms, her voice steady but tinged with unease. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." As they approached one of the towering spires, the details became clearer and more unsettling. The surface wasn't just stone. It seemed to shift and writhe under the dim light of the dying sun. Strange symbols were etched into the material, glowing faintly in hues of green and blue. Dr. Rin Calder ran her gloved hand over the markings, her breath quickening inside her helmet. "These aren't natural formations," she murmured. "This is architecture. Alien, yes, but deliberate. Someone built this." Her words sent a ripple of tension through the group. If someone had built these structures, where were they now? And why would anyone choose such a hostile environment for construction? Further exploration revealed even stranger sights. Between the spires lay ruins, crumbled buildings half buried in ash, their shapes too symmetrical to be natural. Some still bore traces of intricate carvings depicting scenes of colossal beings locked in combat against shadowy figures. One carving showed the giants wielding weapons that emitted beams of light, while the shadows writhed and consumed everything around them. "This looks like war," muttered Lieutenant Arlen Cade, his voice low. "But who, or what, are they fighting?" No one had an answer. The deeper they ventured, the more alien the surroundings became. The ground beneath their feet felt unnaturally warm, almost as if the planet itself were alive. Occasionally, the team heard faint rumblings, like distant thunder, though there were no visible storms overhead. It made everyone uneasy, especially Engineer Kai Solis, who kept glancing nervously at his scanner. "Something's messing with our readings," he said finally. "I can't get a clear signal from the ship. It's like something doesn't want us here." Before anyone could respond, a sudden gust of wind swept through the area, carrying with it a fine mist that clung to their suits. When the mist cleared, the team noticed something new. A massive doorway embedded in the side of one of the spires. Unlike the shifting, organic texture of the rest of the structure, the doorway was smooth and metallic, adorned with glowing runes that pulsed rhythmically. "This has to be it," Elira said, her tone resolute despite the growing sense of dread. "If there's any clue about the distress signal, it'll be inside." With some effort, the team managed to pry the door open, revealing a dark passageway leading downward. The air inside was cooler but carried a strange, metallic tang that none of them could identify. As they descended, the walls began to glow faintly, illuminating their path. More carvings lined the corridor, telling stories of triumph and tragedy. One particularly vivid panel depicted the towering beings, the Deathworlders, as Rin dubbed them, standing victorious atop a battlefield littered with shadowy corpses. But another showed those same beings falling, consumed by the very shadows they had fought. "These people didn't just leave," Rin whispered, her voice trembling. "They were wiped out." The realization hit the team hard. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't ended well. Yet the distress signal persisted, calling out across the void. Was it a warning, or a plea for help? At the end of the corridor, they found what appeared to be a control room of sorts. In the center stood a pedestal, its surface covered in buttons and levers shaped for hands far larger than human ones. Above it hovered a holographic display showing a map of the galaxy, but one star burned brighter than all the others. It was their location. And then, without warning, the display flickered, and a deep, guttural voice echoed through the chamber. The voice boomed again, deeper and more resonant this time. "NTRUD or as DETCTED. Identify your CLVs." Captain Elira Voss raised her hand slowly, signaling caution to her team. Her mind raced, trying to process what was happening. Was this some kind of automated defense system? Or was there something, or someone, still alive down here? "We are explorers from Earth," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the tension gripping her chest. "We received a distress signal and came to investigate. We mean no harm." For a moment, there was silence. Then the room hummed with energy as panels along the walls lit up, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. The pedestal in the center began to shift, its surface rippling like liquid metal. Slowly, a figure emerged, not human, but not entirely machine either. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, its body composed of sleek, biomechanical parts that glowed faintly with pulsating lights. Its face was featureless save for 2 glowing slits where eyes might have been. "You are organic," the creature stated, its voice now softer but still carrying an otherworldly resonance. "Fragile, vulnerable." Elira swallowed hard, but didn't back down. "Yes, we're organic, but we're also intelligent. Who, or what, are you?" The creature tilted its head slightly, as if studying them. "I am Sentinel Unit Alpha 7, Guardian of Caleth." It paused, then added, "and protector of the legacy of the Deathworlders." The mention of the Deathworlders sent a jolt through the team. Dr. Rincalder stepped forward cautiously, her curiosity overriding her fear. "The Deathworlders. They built this place, didn't they? What happened to them?" Alpha 7's glowing slits dimmed momentarily, as though saddened by the question. "They were consumed. Their hubris led them to summon forces beyond their control. The Harvester came, and it devoured them. All life, all light. Only remnants remain." "The Harvester?" Lieutenant Arlen Cade asked sharply. "What is that?" "It is destruction incarnate," Alpha 7 replied. "A being born of entropy, feeding on existence itself. The Deathworlders sought to harness its power, but unleashed it instead. Now it sleeps in the void, waiting to awaken." The word hung heavy in the air, chilling everyone to the bone. Engineer Kai Solis spoke up hesitantly. "If it's asleep, why did you send out the distress signal? Why call us here?" Alpha 7 turned its gaze toward him, the light in its eye slits flickering. "The signal was not meant for you. It was a warning, a failsafe left by the Deathworlders to alert others should the Harvester stir. Yet your arrival has disturbed the balance. The Harvester senses activity here. It grows restless." Elira clenched her fists inside her gloves. "So we've made things worse just by coming." "Perhaps," Alpha 7 admitted, "but perhaps not. There may yet be a way to stop it, if you possess the resolve to do so." "What do you mean?" Elira demanded. The Sentinel gestured toward the pedestal behind it. "Within this facility lies a weapon capable of combating the Harvester. But activating it requires knowledge lost to time, and sacrifices few are willing to make." "Sacrifices?" The word sent a ripple of unease through the group. No one dared ask what kind of sacrifices the Sentinel referred to, but the weight of its implications settled over them like a suffocating blanket. Dr. Calder broke the silence, her tone urgent. "Can you show us the weapon? If there's even a chance we can stop this thing before it wakes fully, we have to try." Alpha 7 regarded her for a long moment before nodding. "Follow me. But know this, once you commit to this path, there will be no turning back." With that, the Sentinel turned and moved deeper into the chamber, its metallic footsteps echoing ominously. The team exchanged uneasy glances but followed without hesitation. They had come too far to turn back now. As they walked, the walls around them began to change. The carvings grew darker, more chaotic, depicting scenes of despair and annihilation. Shadows seemed to writhe in the corners of their vision, though when they looked directly, nothing was there. The air grew colder, heavier, pressing against them like a physical force. Finally, they reached another massive doorway, this one sealed tightly. Alpha 7 placed one of its claw-like hands against the surface, and the door hissed open, revealing a cavernous room bathed in dim red light. At its center lay a colossal device, a towering construct of alien design, bristling with spines and glowing conduits. "This is the Annihilator," Alpha 7 announced. "It is your only hope." But as the team stared at the ominous machine, None of them could shake the feeling that using it might cost them far more than they were prepared to give. The cavernous room housing the annihilator was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Its sheer size dwarfed everything around it, its alien design pulsating with an eerie energy that seemed almost alive. The spines jutting from its surface glowed faintly, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Strange symbols etched into the floor spiraled outward like ripples in water, humming softly underfoot. It felt less like a machine and more like a sleeping beast waiting to be awakened. This is incredible," Dr. Wren Calder whispered, her voice trembling with equal parts wonder and dread. She stepped closer, her gloved hand hovering just above one of the glowing conduits. "If we can activate this thing, maybe, just maybe, we can stop whatever's coming." Captain Elira Voss didn't share her optimism. Her sharp eyes scanned the device warily, searching for any sign of danger. "How do we even begin?" she asked, turning to Alpha 7. "You said activating it requires knowledge we don't have." The Sentinel stood motionless for a moment before replying. The Deathworlders left instructions encoded within their archives, but decoding them will take time and effort. And even then, it hesitated, its glowing slits dimming slightly. Even then, success is not guaranteed. "Time isn't something we've got plenty of," muttered Lieutenant Arlen Cade, checking his scanner. "These readings are getting worse by the minute. Whatever the harvester is, it's definitely stirring." As if on cue, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the hum of the annihilator grew louder, almost as if it were responding to something far away. Engineer Kai Solis grabbed onto a nearby railing to steady himself. "Did you feel that? Something big just moved out there." Elira clenched her jaw. "We need to work fast. Rin, start deciphering those archives. Arlen, keep monitoring the environment. Anything unusual, I want to know immediately. Kai, see if you can interface with this thing and figure out how it works." The team sprang into action, each member focusing on their assigned task. Rin set up her portable workstation near a wall covered in ancient carvings, using advanced software to analyze patterns and cross-reference them with known languages. Arlen stayed close to the entrance, his eyes glued to his scanner as he tracked seismic activity and atmospheric changes. Meanwhile, Kai approached the annihilator cautiously, examining its base for access points or control panels. But as they worked, strange phenomena began to plague them. At first, it was subtle, a faint whisper in their ears, barely audible over the hum of the machine. Then came fleeting glimpses of movement in the periphery of their vision. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting into shapes that resembled towering figures with elongated limbs and gaping maws. Every time someone turned to look directly, the shadows vanished. "It's messing with us," Kai muttered, wiping sweat from his brow, despite the freezing temperature. "I swear I saw something standing right behind me." "You're not imagining things," Rin replied grimly, her focus never leaving her screen. "These symbols, they're warnings. They talk about entities feeding on fear, manifesting as nightmares to weaken their prey." The Lyra frowned deeply. "Stay focused. Don't let it get inside your head." Her words did little to calm the growing unease among the crew. When Arlen reported another spike in seismic activity, followed by a low guttural growl echoing through the chamber, panic threatened to creep in. "Whatever's out there, it's getting closer," he warned, gripping his scanner tightly. Then, without warning, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness for several heart-stopping seconds. When they returned, the team found themselves surrounded by ghostly apparitions, twisted versions of themselves, their faces hollow and eyes blackened. The apparitions mimicked their movements but moved unnaturally, jerking and twitching like broken marionettes. "What the hell is this?" Kai shouted, backing away instinctively. Alpha 7's voice cut through the chaos. "These are fragments of the Harvester's influence, projections designed to destabilize your minds. Resist them. Focus on the task at hand." Easier said than done. As the apparitions closed in, The crew fought to maintain their composure. Elira drew her sidearm, aiming at one of the spectral figures only for it to dissolve into smoke upon impact. "They're not real," she barked. "Don't engage them." Slowly, painfully, the team regained control, forcing themselves to ignore the hallucinations. But the experience left them shaken, a stark reminder of the horrors they were up against. When Rin finally spoke again, her voice carried a note of urgency. "I think I've found something, a partial sequence to activate the annihilator. But it's incomplete. We'll need to go deeper into the facility to retrieve the rest." The deeper the team ventured into the facility, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air grew heavier, thick with an unshakable sense of dread. Faint whispers echoed through the corridors, too soft to make out, but loud enough to keep everyone on edge. Even Alpha 7, the stoic sentinel, seemed uneasy, its glowing slits dimming intermittently, as though it were struggling against some unseen force. Dr. Rin Calder led the way, clutching her tablet tightly as she cross-referenced the symbols they encountered with the partial sequence she had decoded earlier. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear alone, but from exhaustion. "We're close," she said finally, stopping in front of a massive door adorned with intricate carvings. "This is it, the archive chamber." Before anyone could respond, the ground quaked violently, knocking several members of the crew off balance. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and cracks began to form along the walls. "What's happening?" Lieutenant Arlen Cade shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening roar. "The harvester stirs," Alpha 7 intoned gravely. "Its presence grows stronger. You must hurry." Alara Voss steadied herself against the wall, her sharp eyes scanning the chaos around them. "Rin, get that door open. Everyone else, stay alert." With shaking fingers, Rin activated the panel beside the door. It hissed open slowly, revealing a cavernous room filled with towering shelves of crystalline data cores. Each core pulsed faintly with light, casting an ethereal glow across the chamber. In the center stood a pedestal similar to the one they'd seen earlier, except this one was surrounded by floating holograms displaying fragments of text and images. "This is it," Rin breathed, rushing toward the pedestal. "If we can piece together the rest of the activation sequence, we might stand a chance." But as she reached for the pedestal, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. The team spun around just in time to see Engineer Kai Solis collapse to his knees, clutching his head. His eyes were wide with terror, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. "It's here. It's inside my head," he choked out, his voice trembling. Before anyone could react, shadows erupted from the corners of the room, swirling together to form a grotesque figure, a twisted amalgamation of flesh and darkness. Its elongated limbs ended in razor-sharp claws, and its hollow eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence. It let out a guttural growl that reverberated through the chamber, sending chills down everyone's spines. "Stay back," Elira barked, raising her weapon. But when she fired, the bullets passed harmlessly through the creature, dissipating like smoke. "It's not physical," Alpha 7 warned. "It feeds on your fears. Do not let it consume you." Kai screamed again, his body convulsing as if invisible hands were tearing him apart. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the shadowy figure lunged forward and enveloped him completely. When it dissipated moments later, Kai was gone, vanished without a trace. "No," Rin cried, tears streaming down her face. She turned to Elira, her voice breaking. "We can't fight this thing. We need to leave now." "We don't have that luxury," Elira replied firmly, though her own hands shook as she lowered her weapon. "If we run, we'll only delay the inevitable. We finish this, or none of us make it out alive." Arlen stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. "She's right. Kai gave us a chance by buying us time. We owe it to him to see this through." Nodding grimly, Rin returned to the pedestal, her fingers flying over the controls. As she worked, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, trying to drown out her thoughts. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, forming monstrous shapes that loomed closer with each passing second. But she refused to look up, focusing all her energy on decoding the final pieces of the sequence. Finally, after what felt like hours, she let out a triumphant cry. "I've got it. The full activation sequence. It's ready." Just as she spoke, the temperature in the room plummeted. Frost spread across the walls, and the air crackled with electricity. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber, cold and merciless. "You cannot stop me." The voice reverberated through the chamber, freezing everyone in place. "You cannot stop me." The words were not just heard, they were felt, vibrating deep within their bones, filling them with an overwhelming sense of despair. Shadows coalesced around the edges of the room, twisting into a monstrous form that loomed over them like a living nightmare. Its hollow eyes burned with malice, and its jagged mouth stretched impossibly wide as it let out a deafening roar. Captain Elira Voss tightened her grip on her weapon, though she knew bullets wouldn't harm this thing. Her mind raced, searching for options. But there were none. They had come too far to turn back now. "Rin," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "How do we activate the annihilator? Tell me what we need to do." Dr. Rin Calder hesitated, clutching the tablet tightly. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she scrolled through the decoded sequence. "It's complicated," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Deathworlders designed it to require multiple operators working in sync. But there's more. It needs a power source strong enough to amplify its output." "Like what?" Lieutenant Arlen Cade asked sharply, his scanner showing erratic readings as the Harvester's presence disrupted everything around them. The ship's fusion core, Engineer Kai Solis, might have answered if he were still with them. Instead, it was Alpha 7 who spoke up, its glowing slits flickering ominously. The EO's core could provide sufficient energy, but doing so would render your vessel inoperable. You would be stranded here. Illyra clenched her jaw. Stranded on this death world, or dead alongside it. Neither option was appealing. But before she could respond, Rin continued, her tone grim. "There's another problem. The activation ritual demands a sacrifice, a life willingly given to stabilize the Annihilator's systems long enough for it to fire." The room fell silent. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, crushing any hope they had left. A sacrifice. Someone would have to die for this plan to work. "No," Arlen said firmly, shaking his head. "We can find another way. There has to be another solution." "There isn't," Rin replied, her voice cracking under the strain. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at each member of the team. "I've gone over every line of code, every symbol. This is the only way." For a moment, no one moved. The Harvester's shadowy form shifted closer, its presence suffocating. It raised one clawed hand, and the ground beneath them cracked violently, sending shards of rock flying. Time was running out. "I'll do it." Everyone turned to see Ensign Tessa Marlowe step forward. She was young, barely out of training, but her expression was resolute. "I'm the least experienced here. If anyone should stay behind, it's me." "No," Elira snapped, stepping between Tessa and the pedestal. "Absolutely not. We're not leaving anyone behind." "I'm not asking permission," Tessa shot back, her voice steady despite the tears welling in her eyes. "If this is the only way to stop that thing, then I'll do it. I didn't come all this way just to run away." Before Elira could argue further, Alpha 7 interjected. "Her resolve is commendable, but the choice must be unanimous. All operators must agree to proceed, or abandon the mission entirely." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Each of them wrestled with guilt, fear, and duty. Finally, Arlen spoke up, his voice hoarse. "She's right. We don't have a choice. If we don't act now, none of us will make it out alive." One by one, the others nodded reluctantly, their faces etched with sorrow. Even Elira, after a long pause, gave a slow, pained nod. "All right," she said quietly. But know this, we carry your memory with us. Humanity will remember your sacrifice." Tessa managed a small smile, though her hands trembled as she approached the pedestal. "Just promise me you'll finish this," she whispered. "Make sure it wasn't for nothing." As she placed her hand on the glowing surface, the symbols flared brighter, bathing the room in blinding light. The harvester roared in fury, lunging toward them, but the machine began to hum with power, creating a barrier that held it at bay. "This is it," Rin said, her voice breaking. "Let's end this." With Tessa's sacrifice fueling the annihilator, the team prepared to execute the final sequence. But even as they worked, the harvester's rage grew stronger, its shadowy tendrils reaching for them. The battle was far from over, and failure meant doom for everyone. The annihilator roared to life, its spines glowing brighter with each passing second. The hum of energy filled the chamber, vibrating through the floor and walls, making it hard for anyone to stand steady. Tessa Marlowe's sacrifice had ignited something ancient and powerful, but the machine was far from stable. Flickering lights danced across its surface, and sparks erupted from exposed conduits, as if protesting the strain. Dr. Rin Calder worked furiously at one of the control panels, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. "We need to stabilize the core," she shouted over the deafening noise. "If we don't balance the power flow, this thing will overload before we can fire." Captain Elira Voss moved quickly to assist, her sharp eyes scanning the readouts displayed on floating screens. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "Redirect auxiliary power to the containment field," Rin replied, her tone frantic. "If that fails, the harvester will tear us apart before we even get a shot off." Elira nodded and rushed to another panel, her hands moving deftly as she rerouted energy streams. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Arlen Cade monitored the harvester's movements, his scanner showing erratic spikes in energy readings. "It's getting closer," he warned, his voice tight with panic. Whatever barrier the annihilator created isn't holding it back for long. The monstrous entity loomed just beyond the chamber's entrance, its shadowy form writhing like smoke caught in a hurricane. Its hollow eyes burned with hatred, and its claws scraped against the invisible barrier, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. Each strike weakened the shield further, cracks forming in its shimmering surface. "We're running out of time," Arlen yelled, backing away instinctively as the barrier flickered dangerously. Alpha 7 stood near the pedestal where Tessa had made her sacrifice, its metallic body pulsing faintly in sync with the annihilator. "The weapon requires additional operators," it announced, its voice steady but urgent. "2 more must link themselves to the system to amplify its output." Elira froze, her heart sinking. Another demand. Another cost. She turned to the remaining crew members, her gaze unwavering. "Who's with me?" Without hesitation, Arlen stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "I'm in." Rin hesitated, her hands trembling as she looked between the controls and the growing threat outside. I can't leave my station," she stammered. "If I stop now, the whole system could collapse." "You won't have to," Elira assured her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Just keep doing what you're doing. We'll handle the rest." With no time to waste, Elira and Arlen approached the annihilator, their steps heavy with resolve. They placed their hands on glowing nodes protruding from the machine's base, feeling an immediate surge of energy course through their bodies. It was both exhilarating and excruciating, like being pulled apart atom by atom while simultaneously being stitched back together. Their vision blurred, and their thoughts became jumbled, but they held on, gritting their teeth against the pain. Core stability increasing, Rin called out, relief evident in her voice. "Keep it up." The annihilator responded, its glow intensifying until it illuminated the entire chamber. The barrier holding the harvester at bay strengthened momentarily, forcing the creature to retreat slightly. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. "The weapon needs a target lock," Alpha 7 stated. Someone must guide the firing sequence manually. "I'll do it," Elira said without hesitation. Her mind connected directly to the machine, flooding her consciousness with streams of alien data. Images of stars, galaxies, and cosmic forces flashed before her eyes, overwhelming her senses. Through sheer willpower, she focused on the harvester, locking onto its chaotic energy signature. "Firing in 10 seconds, Rin announced, her voice strained but resolute. 9, 8. The harvester sensed the impending attack and lashed out violently, slamming its claws against the weakening barrier. Cracks spread rapidly, threatening to shatter it completely. "Hold together," Arlen barked, sweat pouring down his face as he struggled to maintain his connection to the machine. 5, 4, Rin continued, her voice trembling. The harvester let out a deafening roar, its form swelling grotesquely as it prepared to break through. 3, 2. Elira poured every ounce of strength into the targeting system, her muscles burning, her vision darkening at the edges. She could feel the weight of everything resting on her shoulders. The lives of her crew, the fate of humanity, the memory of Tessa's sacrifice. 1. Fire. The chamber was eerily silent after the Annihilator's blast. The oppressive weight of the harvester's presence had vanished, leaving behind an unsettling emptiness. Captain Elira Voss slumped against the machine, her body trembling from exhaustion. Her hands still tingled with residual energy, and her vision swam as she tried to steady herself. Lieutenant Arlen Cade wasn't faring much better. He leaned heavily on one of the control panels, his face pale and sweat dripping down his temples. Dr. Rin Calder collapsed onto her knees, clutching her tablet tightly. Tears streamed down her face as she stared at the spot where the harvester had been moments ago. "It's gone," she whispered hoarsely, almost unable to believe it. "We actually did it." But their relief was short-lived. A low rumble began to echo through the chamber, growing louder by the second. Cracks spread across the walls, and dust rained down from the ceiling. The ground beneath them shook violently, threatening to collapse entirely. "What's happening now?" Arlen shouted, struggling to stay upright. "The weapon destabilized the facility," Alpha 7 announced, its voice calm but urgent. "This structure cannot withstand the energy released by the Annihilator. We must evacuate immediately." Elira forced herself to stand, ignoring the pain coursing through her limbs. "Everyone, move. Back to the ship." The team scrambled toward the exit, their movements sluggish from fatigue. As they emerged into the open air, they were met with a horrifying sight. The planet itself seemed to be unraveling. Jagged fissures tore across the surface, glowing with molten light as if the core had been breached. The towering spires that once dominated the landscape crumbled into ash, swallowed by the quaking earth. "We're running out of time," Elira barked, urging the others forward. "Keep moving." Behind them, the facility collapsed in a deafening roar, sending shockwaves rippling outward. The crew stumbled but kept going, their eyes fixed on the distant silhouette of the Eos. It stood intact amidst the chaos, a beacon of hope against the dying world. When they finally reached the ship, Engineer Kai Solis' absence hit them hard. There was no one waiting inside to greet them, no cheerful voice over the comms guiding them home. Instead, the cockpit felt cold and hollow, a stark reminder of the sacrifices they'd made. Rin took her place at the navigation console while Arlen powered up the engines. Elira strapped herself into the captain's seat, her mind racing. "Alpha 7, she called out, turning to the sentinel who would follow them aboard. "Can we stabilize the ship's systems long enough to escape?" "I will assist," Alpha 7 replied, moving toward the engineering bay. "But I warn you, the fusion core is damaged. Reaching critical velocity may destroy the vessel." Elira clenched her jaw. They had no choice. "Do what you can. We're not dying here." As the engines roared to life, the ground beneath the Eos gave way, tilting the ship dangerously. Alarms blared, warning lights flashing red across the dashboard. "Hold on," Arlen yelled, gripping the controls tightly. With a deafening screech, the EOs lifted off, barely clearing the crumbling surface. Outside the viewport, Caliph disintegrated before their eyes, consumed by fire and darkness. The team watched in stunned silence as the planet collapsed inward, imploding into a swirling mass of energy. But just as they thought they were safe, the ship shuddered violently. Smoke filled the cabin, and sparks flew from overloaded circuits, the cores failing. Alpha 7 reported grimly. "We have seconds before catastrophic overload." Elira's heart pounded in her chest. She turned to the others, her voice firm despite the fear gripping her. "Brace for impact." In a desperate bid to survive, Arlen rerouted every ounce of power to the thrusters, pushing the ship beyond its limits. For a moment, it felt like they were flying straight into oblivion. But then, with a final burst of speed, they broke free of Caliph's gravitational pull. Behind them, the planet exploded in a blinding flash of light, sending a shockwave rippling through space. The EOs rocked violently, its hull groaning under the strain, but somehow it held together. Silence fell over the crew as they drifted away from the wreckage, battered but alive. They had defeated the Harvester, but at a cost none of them would ever forget. And somewhere deep within the void, another beacon began to blink, calling out to those brave enough, or foolish enough, to answer. The EOs limped through the void, its battered hull groaning with every passing second. The crew sat in stunned silence, their bodies aching and minds reeling from what they had endured. Captain Elira Voss stared out the cracked viewport at the endless expanse of stars, her sharp green eyes reflecting both exhaustion and resolve. They were alive, but barely. Dr. Rin Calder leaned back in her seat, her hands trembling as she clutched a data pad filled with fragments of information salvaged from Caliph. "We did it," she murmured softly, more to herself than anyone else. "Against all odds, we stopped it." But the victory felt hollow. Tessa Marlowe's sacrifice weighed heavily on everyone's hearts, and Kai Sola's disappearance left an unfillable void in the team. Even Alpha 7, standing motionless near the engineering bay, seemed subdued, its glowing slits dimmer than usual. "We're not done yet," Elira said finally, breaking the somber quiet. Her voice was firm but carried a note of weariness. "This ship won't hold together forever. We need to assess the damage and figure out how far we can push it before finding help or repairs." Lieutenant Arlen Cade nodded grimly, his face pale and streaked with soot. "I'll run diagnostics on the engines," he offered, already moving toward the rear of the cockpit. "But don't expect miracles." That last jump nearly tore us apart. As Arlen worked, Rin turned her attention to the data they had retrieved. She scrolled through pages of alien text, symbols, and diagrams, piecing together fragments of the Deathworlder's history. "There's so much here," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "Their technology, their culture, it's incredible. If we can decode this fully, humanity could learn so much." Elira glanced at her briefly before returning her gaze to the stars. "Knowledge is only useful if we survive long enough to share it," she reminded gently. "Focus on what matters now." Rin nodded, swallowing hard. She knew Elira was right, but the weight of what they'd uncovered felt monumental. Among the files was something particularly intriguing: coordinates for other locations marked by similar beacons. It seemed the Deathworlders hadn't faced the Harvester alone. They had allies scattered across the galaxy, civilizations that might still exist or leave traces behind. "Captain," Alpha 7 interjected suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. "I have detected another signal. Weak, but consistent. It originates from a nearby system." Elira frowned, leaning forward in her seat. "Another distress call." "It appears so," the Sentinel replied. "Whether it is active or residual remains unclear. However, it may lead to resources or answers." For a moment, no one spoke. The thought of chasing another mystery after everything they'd been through was daunting. But deep down, they all knew there was no turning back. Humanity's survival depended on understanding the threats lurking in the cosmos and preparing for them. "We'll investigate," Elira decided, her tone resolute, but cautiously. "We've pushed our luck far enough for one mission." As the EOs adjusted course toward the new signal, the crew began tending to their wounds and repairing what they could of the ship. Each task was performed in silence, the weight of their losses hanging over them like a storm cloud. Yet amidst the grief, there was also a flicker of hope, a fragile belief that their sacrifices hadn't been in vain. Later, as the ship drifted silently through space, Elira stood alone on the bridge, staring at the distant glow of a star. She thought about Tessa, Kai, and all those who had given everything to ensure humanity's future. A small smile touched her lips despite the sorrow in her heart. "Thank you," she whispered into the void. "Wherever you are, thank you." Somewhere among the stars, another beacon blinked faintly, calling out to those brave enough to listen. And though the journey ahead would be fraught with danger, the crew of the EOs knew one thing for certain. They weren't done exploring. Not yet. The EOs drifted into orbit around a small, unassuming planet bathed in the golden light of its sun. The distress signal grew stronger with each passing moment, guiding them like a lighthouse in the vast sea of stars. Captain Elira Voss stood on the bridge, her weary eyes scanning the surface below through the cracked viewport. After everything they'd endured, she couldn't help but feel a mix of apprehension and cautious optimism. "This place looks habitable," Lieutenant Arlen Cade remarked, his voice tinged with surprise as he studied the readings. No toxic atmosphere, stable gravity, even signs of vegetation. Whoever, or whatever, sent that signal picked a good spot. Dr. Rin Calder nodded absently, still engrossed in the data from Caliph. "It's possible this is another outpost left behind by the Deathworlders, or one of their allies," she suggested. "If so, we might find more answers here." Elira took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "We've come too far to stop now. Prep the shuttle. Let's see what's waiting for us down there." The descent was tense but uneventful, the ship's damaged systems holding together just long enough to land safely. As the crew stepped onto the soft, mossy ground, they were struck by how peaceful the planet felt compared to the nightmare they'd just escaped. Towering trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the air carried a faint floral scent. For the first time in days, they allowed themselves to relax, if only slightly. "Over there," Rin called out, pointing toward a cluster of structures nestled among the hills. They weren't as grand or alien as the spires of Calath. Instead, they appeared almost organic, blending seamlessly with the environment. As they approached, the team noticed intricate carvings etched into the walls, similar to those they'd seen before, but softer, less menacing. At the center of the settlement stood a pedestal identical to the ones they'd encountered earlier. This time, however, it emitted a warm, inviting glow. Before anyone could touch it, a figure emerged from the shadows, a humanoid being cloaked in shimmering robes. Its face was obscured, but its voice resonated with calm authority. "You have answered our call." Elira stepped forward cautiously. "Who are you? What do you want with us?" "We are the Keepers," the figure replied. "Guardians of knowledge left behind by those who came before, the Deathworlders, and others like them. Your arrival confirms that the cycle continues." "The cycle?" Rin asked, her curiosity piqued. "The Harvester is not unique," the Keeper explained. "It is but one of many entities born of entropy, drawn to life and light. The Deathworlders fought bravely, but their hubris led to their downfall. Now it falls to others, like yourselves, to carry the torch." Elira frowned. "And what does that mean for us?" "It means you are part of something greater," the Keeper said simply. "Take these gifts." With a wave of its hand, holographic projections filled the air. Maps, schematics, and records detailing advanced technologies and strategies for survival. Use them wisely. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Another burden, another responsibility, but also an opportunity. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe anymore. There were allies, lessons, and tools to ensure they wouldn't face future threats unprepared. As the Eos lifted off once more, its crew looked back at the tranquil planet fading into the distance. They had lost much, but they carried with them the hope of a brighter future. Elira gripped the controls tightly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "We'll keep moving forward," she said quietly. "For Tessa, for Kai, for everyone counting on us." Somewhere in the void, another beacon blinked faintly, calling out to those brave enough to listen. And the crew of the Eos, battered but unbroken, prepared to answer once again.